This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should, too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio, the very first of 2026. Just happened at Christmas and New Year's Day, both on a Thursday. Staff writer Richard Sims on deck with cruise news and a review of Disney Wish today. But first, staff writer Richard Sims. Happy New Year, Richard.
And Happy New Year to you. It's been a while.
Yeah, yes, it has. So we'll jump right to news here, kicking things off with a scary situation that could have been a whole lot worse.
You know, people often talk about things being every parent's nightmare. Well, this 1000% qualifies. The Carnival Sunrise was docked at Celebration Cay in Grand Bahama when apparently a 4-year-old child sort of, you turn your back for a second and kids can get in trouble. And apparently she wandered away from her mom and wound up falling into the water between the ship and the pier. So think about it, when the ship is at dock, if you're coming back or getting off, you go up and down the gangway, and that gangway sort of gives you a bridge over the water. And there's a couple of feet between the ship and the pier. Well, she fell in that gap. Thankfully, this was not a windy day when the ship might have been moving, because, if you've ever seen that, it would be very scary and you could easily be crushed by a ship. Yeah. But the mom saw what happened, ran, jumped in, and with the help of several crew members and some onlookers, she was able to rescue her child and be rescued herself. The whole thing was captured in really dramatic footage by a passenger on the Carnival Conquest, which happened to also be docked at the pier directly across from where this was all happening. The mother and her daughter were checked out by the medical crew, and reportedly they were fine and went to enjoy their day at Celebration Cay. So all's well that ends well.
Yeah, that's the second time a parent has gone in after a child. Remember over the summer on that Disney ship?
Yes. Of course, that was a completely different situation. Yeah, that was basically somebody posing for a picture in one of those porthole windows, and the little girl fell out. And was it the dad? I think it was the dad jumped in to rescue her, right?
Yeah. And if you're traveling to Hawaii on your next cruise, it'll cost you a little bit more, well, as of right now.
Yeah, when the ball dropped in Times Square with a little help from Carnival Cruise Line, by the way, a new law went into effect in Hawaii. So let me rephrase that, because it's not really a new law so much as it is something that didn't impact cruise ships before. Hawaii has what is basically called a green tax, which went up by a little bit less than 1% on January 1st. But what makes this a big deal for cruisers is that up until now, ships weren't impacted by this. And while it only went up by, 1% to all of those who've already been paying it all this time, it's actually now at 11%. So cruisers went from paying nothing to paying an 11% tax on this. The industry trade group CLIA, which is the Cruise Line International Association, they went to court in order to try and prevent this from going through. They argued, among other things, that this would have a majorly negative impact on Hawaii's tourism, but most of their points were struck down, and Judge Jill Otaki signed it into law. The monies raised by this tax are earmarked for environmental protection projects in general, with an emphasis on climate change-related causes. Several organizations, including CLIA, are continuing to fight the tax, but as of now, it is being implemented.
My only question here, because we've seen this a lot, Greek Isles, also Northern Europe, some med cruise ports doing this environmental fee, calling it climate mitigation. But where is this money actually going? Like, it sounds good and all, I guess, but can you prove the project it's going to? Maybe they don't have to, but it would be nice to justify.
Yeah, I do think that's true. I think it's interesting. A lot of times these taxes that we see in ports, such as Santorini and places like that, a lot of times they justify it as we are using this to sort of shore up our infrastructure because, you're bringing millions of tourists a year to our city. And that is, we have to deal with the garbage. We have to deal with the sewage. We have to deal with, all the other aspects. And so that's often where it's gone. But we haven't really seen an awful lot of information about where something like this, which is specifically aimed at environmental and climate change projects, maybe because it's just now going into effect. I don't know, but you're right. It would be really interesting to see what those projects look like and make sure that this money isn't, being shoved into a general fund where it can be used for anything.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like we get to end the year with one last report of a norovirus-like outbreak on a ship.
Yeah, for those keeping track, that brings the unofficial grand total of outbreaks on cruise ships in 2025, as reported to and by the CDC, to 22. This latest outbreak impacted about 100 passengers sailing on the Celebrity Eclipse, which was, it had about 3,050 people on board, as far as guests are concerned. This is specifically not being called a norovirus outbreak, at least it is as we record this, as the actual cause of the illness hasn't been determined. But the symptoms are pretty much those of norovirus, basically gastrointestinal issues. And, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's neuro. And while this is, of course, making all kinds of headlines, as it does every time norovirus breaks out on a cruise ship, they love using that scare tactic. But this is where I remind everyone, as I always do, that cruise ship norovirus outbreaks make up around 1% of cases. Most of them actually happen on land and therefore are never reported or tracked, whereas when an outbreak happens on a ship, once it reaches a certain percentage of passengers impacted, it has to be reported to the CDC. The CDC then has it on its books, which the media scour and keep an eye on, and it becomes the next big, oh my God, there's an outbreak on a ship. So yes, it is. Obviously, norovirus is not a pleasant thing, but we see so much more reporting on it when it comes to cruise ships than we do on land. A few years ago, there was an outbreak of norovirus at one of my offices, and something like 40 people got it, but there were no headlines screaming, magazine shut down by norovirus because they just don't report it on land.
And a cruise ship which recently made headlines after abandoning a passenger is back in the news, this time because it ran aground.
Not only did the ship run aground, but it did so on a reef off the coast of Papua New Guinea, which is a tad ironic given that the name of the ship is the Coral Adventurer. Mm-hmm. Maybe they should, rename it to the Coral Misadventurer. Right. Now, if the name of the ship sounds familiar, it's because, as Doug mentioned, it was only a few short months ago, I think it was back in October, that the ship abandoned a passenger who was on an excursion. The passenger was later found dead, and an investigation into exactly how the tragedy unfolded and why the ship left without her is underway. But this time, the ship wound up grounded on a reef, and when it was unable to be dislodged, passengers had to be disembarked, and they were flown home. It's been reported that none of the 80 passengers and 44 crew members were injured, and that there doesn't appear to be any kind of toxic discharge. That's always a concern. If you think back to even things like the Costa Concordia, part of the problem was that it leaked a lot of fuel, and the environmental impact on that was really not good. In this case, it looks as if so far there has been none of that kind of leakage. However, the ship has been deemed, at least temporarily, as unseaworthy by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority. And there's sure to be more investigations, given that a local Politico said the ship had taken a route that's not normally used. Why is it not normally used? Because local operators know that the reef is unusually high. So basically what they're saying is this politician is saying they should have known better than to go there, because this is a, concern even for locals who have smaller boats. So it certainly should have been a concern and a known one for the operators of a ship this size. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out of this.
And we wrap things up with a bit of good news here from the folks at NCL. And Richard, I think this one might make you happy in particular.
Oh, yeah, because over the holidays, the very first ship was able to dock at Norwegian's private destination, Great Stirrup Cay. We've been reporting for the last few months that Great Stirrup is undergoing a pretty major transformation. This is all part of the race that we're seeing as all of the different cruise lines sort of try and amp up their private destinations, whether it's, Royal Caribbean is doing it. Carnival has just welcomed its millionth guest to Celebration Key in a really relatively short period of time. So this is now also happening at Great Stirrup Cay. Huge transformation. Some of it won't be done until summer or even later. But not only is the new pier being used by ships arriving now at what was formerly a tender port, but the Great Life Lagoon is open as well. Now, it's called a lagoon, but the biggest part of it is actually a 28,000 square foot heated pool complex featuring like cabanas and a kiddie splash area and swim up bars. Rumor has it that the Vibe Shore Club is also open now. So for those who don't know, this is a beach-based extension of the Vibe Beach Club, which is the adults-only Fort area on Norwegian ships. Everybody who knows me knows that I've long loved the Norwegian, the Vibe Beach Club on Norwegian ships. It's expensive, but I think it's worth it. They now have a shore-based thing where you can purchase access for the day that you are at Great Stirrup Cay. And you're right, Doug, this is news that definitely made my day because this weekend I'll be sailing on Norwegian Breakaway and we'll be stopping at Great Stirrup Cay, which means that very soon I'll be able to give everyone a firsthand report on all the latest developments on the island, how far things have come, what's not coming along as quickly as they'd hoped. And I'll also have the scoop on the Vibe Shore Club because I booked myself a day pass at this new hotspot. Now, remember, right now, when you go to Great Stirrup Cay, your drink package that you have on the ship, if you have a drink package, is extended to the island. But that's going to end in a couple of weeks. In a couple of weeks, that will no longer be true. And that's sort of one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to book the Vibe Shore Club, because as part of the More at Sea or Free at Sea, whichever promotion you get, I get a $50 shore excursion at each port. So to rent a cabana at the Vibe Shore Club, and if you have a Vibe Beach Club on the ship, it does not extend to the shore. You have to book the shore separately. But to book the Vibe Shore Club, on my sailing at least, was around $90, which means that when I applied the $50 shore credit, it came down to like $30. And I was like, okay, that is definitely worth it. Apparently, you get not only the cabana on a nice beach, but you get access to Silver Cove's buffet. That's the high-end area of Great Stirrup Cay, which is not generally open to most of the public, but if you're a part of the Vibe Shore Club, you can go over and eat there. So I will be looking forward to this and giving everybody the scoop, assuming that the weather holds out.
You spend a lot of time checking out the Facebook groups for NCL. What is the temperature? What are people thinking about them taking that drink package away from the island?
People are not happy. And I mean, it's so clearly a money grab because it's one thing to remove the drink package from the private island, but then to sell a separate drink package. I have not seen pricing on that yet, by the way. I don't know if they've released anything, but they have said that, you will be able to buy a separate drink package that is good only on the island. And that is such a money grab. So, Norwegian has definitely, over the last year or two, they've definitely been taking some hits as far as reputationally where nickel and diming is concerned, some concerns with entertainment. So I actually have not been on a Norwegian ship in several years. I've sort of been, for a while there, when I first started cruising, I did almost exclusively Norwegian. But over the last couple of years, I've expanded into the other lines and been exploring other things. So I'll be really interested to explore not only sort of how these various changes that people are complaining about have impacted the experience, but also how this ship is holding up, because Breakaway was actually my very first week-long cruise. I had done a one-night cruise on the Gem before it, but my first real cruise was on Breakaway. So I'll be really interested to see if you can go home again.
Yeah, your last sailing had to be around, 2022, and we did Getaway?
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. And that was a couple of years ago.
That was, almost 3 years ago, March of 22.
Yeah. The only thing I can think is, did I do Prima after that? I might have done
you
Prima
did, yeah.
after that.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's been a couple years. So I think my timing has been great because, they just brought back the whole free at sea thing, which they had done away with for a while. And of course, getting to explore Great Stirrup Cay. So I'm kind of psyched to see, how current Norwegian stacks up with the Norwegian that I loved for many years when I first started cruising.
How many cruises do you have for this year?
Well, let's see. I'm starting the year with a cruise because I leave on January 4th. So that's my first. I am doing Celebrity Apex in March, and then I'm doing Virgin, a different Virgin ship. Brilliant Lady was my first. Now I'm doing, Resilient Lady, but I'm not even sure. And that will be in September. So right now I have 3 booked for 2026.
I love it. Staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thanks, my friend, and thank you for a successful 2025.
Yeah, good times. I'm really looking forward to seeing what adventures next.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Margie and her husband just returned from a 3-night cruise aboard Disney Wish out of Port Canaveral, Florida. It went over to Castaway and supposed to go to Nassau, but we'll get into that in just a little bit here. First off, Margie, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited to hear your take on Disney Wish, especially they are not bringing the grandkids this time. It's just you and the husband there. So a Disney for adults type cruise. So with that said, we'll take a step back before we get to the ship. What made you want to take this 3-nighter on Wish out of Port Canaveral?
Well, Disney ran about a 1-week special that just offered amazing rates on a last-minute cruise, and it was just too good to pass up. We had never been on the Disney Wish, and we wanted to check it out. And it was over Thanksgiving. It was the day after Thanksgiving, so we had the free time off work, and so we jumped on board.
All right, fair enough. And you're in the Atlanta area. You make your way down to Port Canaveral. Any pre-cruise time?
Yes, we did a couple days in the parks before we went down there. I worked from home Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then we went to the parks at night. And then Thursday was Thanksgiving. And so we went over to Disney Springs and had a lovely dinner that I didn't have to prepare. Nice. So it was excellent. The next morning we got up and drove to Port Canaveral.
How crowded is Disney during Thanksgiving?
Very crowded. We were surprised that early in the week because we went Monday and Tuesday night, and we went Sunday and Monday and Tuesday night, and it was still just so many people that week.
Well, you make your way to Port Canaveral. It's time to board the Disney Wish. How was embarkation, and how long did it take you to get from the curb to the ship?
Embarkation flowed smoothly, but it took a while. It was about 40 minutes from the car to when we were on the ship. But all the lines moved, but you had a line for everything. You had a line to get upstairs, and then you had a line to go through the scanning machine where they scan your bags. And then they had a line to get checked in. And then you had another line to actually get on the ship. And it seemed like it was smooth. You were constantly moving, but it felt like they were constantly pushing you into a different line. So it took a full 40 minutes. And we've gotten so spoiled. Some of these cruise lines will get you on in 10 minutes that it felt like a long time.
You mentioned this was your first time sailing Disney Wish. So I'm curious, as you made your way on board the ship and entered that grand atrium there, could you tell the differences right out of the gate?
Yes. The Disney, of course, they announce you as you walk in, and they've got the big Mickey hands on waving hello to everybody. And so it's a happy, magical feeling. Disney does things really well. So you felt really welcomed when you walk onto the ship.
And what were your first impressions as you walked on board?
It was a beautiful atrium. It was all decorated for Christmas, so it was gorgeous. They had a few of the characters upstairs waving at everybody as they came in, so that's always fun to see. But as soon as we got on board a little after 12, and our room was already ready. They told us we could go straight up to our room, so that was nice.
Yeah, I gotta love that. So you make your way to your room. What type of stateroom did you book for this 3-night cruise, and what did you think of it?
Well, we booked a guarantee balcony because, again, it was last minute. But they put us in a family deluxe. So we had the split bathroom. So we had one door that was the toilet and the sink, and the other door was the shower and the sink. So that made it nice in the mornings when you're trying to get ready. We had a full balcony. We were on the 11th floor. So great views. It was really spacious. A lot of room in that cabin.
Now, compared to some of the older Disney ships you may have sailed on, could you tell a lot of difference within the staterooms?
Not really. The shower was a little nicer. It was a tub, the plexiglass shower door. I like not having the curtain. So it was a little bit of an upgrade on the bathroom, but the rooms looked very, very similar to what we've had. We've only sailed the Disney Dream.
Let's talk about the food on this 3-night cruise. We'll go to the buffet area, which they call what on Disney Wish?
That's the Marceline Market.
There you go. And how was the food? And did it ever feel too crowded during your voyage?
It did not feel too crowded, but Disney does a really good job of dispersing people with shows and trivia. And then on the pool deck, they had a lot of food options as well. So when we went to the Marceline Market, it didn't feel super crowded, but it's not open a lot. Like some cruise ships, it's open almost all the time. This one was open for breakfast, then closed down for an hour, then was open for lunch, closed down around 1:30 to 2 every day, and then it was done.
Okay. So
that was the only time you could go up there, but the food was phenomenal. The first day we got fresh crab legs and peel and eat shrimp. They had a salad, and then they had some grilled steak and some grilled shrimp that you could put on your salad. They had salmon, some skirt steak. The food at the Marceline Market was over the top excellent.
How about outside of the market, like grab and go, maybe hot dogs and burgers by the pool or any places like that?
Yep. On the pool deck, they have Goofy's Grill, which is going to be your hamburgers, hot dogs, as well as some non-meat options. And then they had the Mickey's Smokehouse, which was barbecue. Really, really good barbecue. We did get that one afternoon for lunch. And then they had the pizza. I believe it was Daisy's Pizza Pie. Really good pizzas, but surprisingly, it shut down every day at 6. I don't know what a cruise line is supposed to do if you can't get pizza at 2 in the morning. But they seem to survive. So the pizza was excellent, but just not after 6 p.m. And then they had Donald's Cantina, which was more of a Mexican flair, and had, we did not go there, but it looked like some really good tacos and different Mexican type quick grab and go.
Barbecue, kind of hard to recreate on cruise ships sometimes because, you can't have a flame with a real authentic smoker. So I'm curious how that stacked up against landside barbecue.
It was pretty good. I wouldn't say it was the best barbecue I've ever had in my entire life, but it was definitely good enough to go back and get more.
There you go. The main dining room, of course, Disney has rotational dining. Explain to us how that worked for your party, you and the husband, and how did the rotation work and what venues did you hit up?
Well, the rotational dining with Disney, you go to whatever restaurant they have on your dining card. And then the next night you go to a different restaurant, but your staff stays with you. So they rotate as well. So you have the same server every night, even though you're going to 3 different restaurants. So you get to know your preferences and kind of treat you and say hello and things like that. So that's fun.
And what are the 3 different venues on there, the 3 restaurants?
On this one, the first night we went to Marvel, and it was hilarious. They had video screens, and they paced the meal really well so that you could kind of watch the screen, and they were interacting with you, and there was a quantum generator on your table. And at certain times they're like, okay, push the generator. And you'd have to push a button and everything would light up and, wasn't super interactive, but it was a very fun story. And then at the end of our meal, Spider-Man came and made an appearance and was stopping at all the tables to say hello and visit with some of the kids and get pictures made. So that was a lot of fun.
What food or what dishes really stood out to you?
They had everything that you would expect, but it was like a unique names.
Mm-hmm.
Like they had something from Wakanda and stuff like that. So I wasn't paying attention to the names. Mm-hmm. They had a good pasta, a good fish, a chicken, and a steak every single menu, and some really good appetizers. It was not your typical cruise fare. Mm-hmm. I did not get a single bowl of French onion soup.
Okay.
But I did get some of their other soups, and they were very good. I think I got broccoli and cheese one night. Mm-hmm. I think Jimmy got the corn chowder. The salads were very good. Some more dainty appetizers. Mm-hmm. Not some of the hearty stuff that you usually get, but they were excellent at all three restaurants. The food was very, very good. And then on every restaurant, they had your basics. If you wanted, they had a strip sirloin, a grilled chicken, and I think a pasta that you could get every night if you didn't want to experiment.
With rotational dining, do they still have, even because you're moving around every single night, and I guess maybe they probably do, is there still like a late and an early dining and an anytime dining, or is it only certain dining times?
Only the two dining times.
Okay.
With Disney, they expect you to eat pretty much at your main dining room. Mm-hmm. Goofy's Grill was open until 10 p.m. at night, but if you didn't want to just get a burger, you needed to go to the main dining room. But they do such a show at their main dining that you kind of hate to miss it. Now, they do have the two adult restaurants that are 18 and older only. Mm-hmm. That's Enchante and Paolo. But we didn't do those. There is an extra cost for those. That's their specialty dining. And those reservations go fast. And we booked this very last minute. So we did not get into the adult specialty dining.
Yeah, through the years, different folks I've interviewed on here who've sailed Disney Cruise Line always talk about, Apollo's a very hard to get reservation. Being that you do sell at Disney, what do you tell your clients to snag a reservation if they want one?
Well, if it's a must-do, then they just need to book concierge, and then they're going to get it. Mm-hmm. But if they're just staying in the regular cabins like us, the rest of us folk, you need to be online literally at 60 days out or whenever your time frame is. Disney has tiers just like the other cruise lines. So if you're platinum, you get to book it first. Uh-huh. Then if you're diamond, you get to book it second. And then gold, and then silver. And then if it's your first time cruise, there's a good chance you're not going to get it. Right. But if you really want it, the day you get on the ship, it will give you in your Navigator app, you go to I think they were doing it at the Keg and Compass, this sailing, and you can go sign up. They always hold out a few reservations for that person that just didn't know that they had to book it in advance, so they can still offer it.
So you didn't do any specialty on this one. How about grab and goes, coffee shops, places like that around the ship that might have, pastries or quick bites?
Well, they have the Cove Cafe, which is in the adult only area. And that's where I got my coffee every morning, but they did not have pastries there. If you needed pastries, you really needed to go down to the Marceline Market. I'm sure there's another place to get pastries, but I didn't see any place else.
Okay.
Now they do a show in all the restaurants. So the second night we were in Arendelle. So we had the cast from Frozen. First of all, they had some fabulous musicians. They had a guitar player, a violin player, and a singer performing for us. And then Anna and Elsa came out, and Sven and Olaf came out. Even Olaf the Snowman came out. And I can't think of his name, but the guy from the shop that goes, yoo-hoo, he came out and was trying to get the audience into the show.
Gotcha.
So it was a lot of entertainment during the meal. And then the third night, we were in 1923, mm-hmm. which is a nod to the year Disney opened. And it was more upscale. That was kind of the main dining room, fine dining night. So a lot of people did dress up and get their pictures made before dining that were eating in that one.
How about entertainment on this 3-night cruise? What did you think? I know Disney really excels with either their fireworks show, if the weather even allowed for this sailing for you, because it sounds like it was kind of windy a bit, or the main theater shows.
Disney does a great job, and they have such incredible talent. We have seen the sail away party before, so we didn't go up, and it was a little windy, so we didn't go upstairs, but they did do that on the pool deck. And then the first night we went and saw Seize the Adventure, and that's the star of the show is Goofy, so that's kind of a fun little romp. And then the next 2 nights they had The Little Mermaid and Aladdin. So these are Broadway caliber shows that you get to watch. Now they do condense them down, so they're only about an hour, but they were fantastic. It was like going to see a show on Broadway. We really enjoyed that.
Since you were just you and your husband, a Disney adults cruise, what kind of watering holes do they have on there for the adults?
They've got several. They've got Tiana's Bayou, which has got a little bit of a jazz flavor. They had different musicians in there. They had, oh my goodness, I can see it. I can't remember it. About 4 different nightclubs. Oh, now they had the Star Wars night bar, Hyperspace Lounge, which was really, really cool. And it did turn to adult only late at night, but during the day, it was a fun place for kids to go. And they had the Star Wars themed cocktails, and the whole bar was decked out in a Star Wars theme. So that was a lot of fun.
I'm trying to think of, is there one called, Ashley was telling me about it. Was it Nightingales?
Nightingales. That's the one right next to Tiana's.
Okay.
Yes. And it's got a piano. It's got a piano and really good music in there.
Now, I know you weren't there with your grandkids, but do you still take advantage of the character meet and greets?
No, we passed on the character meet and greets. We'll leave that for the kids that are a little bit younger. But it was fun watching them and seeing them all around the ship. You did see a ton of characters just everywhere, from dining to in the main atrium. And then on your Navigator app, it did tell you when there would be character meet and greets. But those were some serious long lines. People were serious about getting their pictures made with characters.
How involved is the Disney Cruise Line app in your cruise experience?
It's pretty good. It's not the best app I've ever used, but it did give you an idea of what was going on, especially our first day out. We were supposed to go to Nassau, and it got switched to a day at sea. They said that Captain actually came on and said, if everybody will shut down their Navigator, give us about 10 minutes, open it back up, and you'll see activities scheduled throughout the ship. And they just, on the spur of the moment, changed. That Navigator changed in the app, and all of a sudden they had trivia in this room, and they had karaoke going on over here, and they had this lounge opening up doing some sort of game show. So they really made sure that we had a great time with an unexpected, if you will, day at sea.
That's one good thing about the apps, because, you know, if we were, let's just say 10 years ago cruising, we would have to they would have to print, 3,000 more flyers, right?
Yes.
And then deliver to everyone's stateroom. Yeah. So that's one positive thing there. So the sea days, as far as crowds and congestion, how did that stack up?
It really wasn't bad. It was very windy. So very few people were at the pool or pool deck. And we went up to the adult, infinity pool in the adult area. And when we got up there, I think there were 2 people in the hot tub, nobody in the infinity pool. So we were the first 2. And then of all the loungers up there, maybe another couple. And that was it. But it was very windy. They do have the pools heated. So even though it was a little chilly because of the winds, the water felt nice. And once we got in the wave pool, the infinity pool, it became a wave pool because the ship was really moving. You could feel it and you could see it in the water where it was dipping down 2 feet of the infinity pool were showing. And then it would go back up and slosh over the edge. And then it would go down again. It was pulling in a circle. So it almost made like a wave pool. And a couple of girls were hanging out nearby, and they saw it. And they came in and started playing in the pool like it was a wave pool. So young adults, obviously they were over 18 because they were in the adult area, but they were getting quite a kick out of the pool moving like that. We were laughing. It was fun.
Did the weather impact the fireworks?
It delayed them slightly, but they did do the fireworks show. We didn't think it was going to go on because it was so cloudy and it was starting to rain. But I think they were determined to do the fireworks since we did not get our day in Nassau. So they did do the fireworks show. And that's always cool to see fireworks off the side of a ship.
Do you get into pirate night?
We had our T-shirts that were our pirate T-shirts, and we left it at that.
Okay, fair enough. So let's talk about
there were full costumes. People were decked with the eye patch and the earring and the whole 9 yards. That's a little over the top for us. We're happy with just our T-shirts that are our piratey T-shirts.
That is so brilliant, though, because, Disney makes a mint on buying, parents buying, the hook and the eye patch and everything at their shop on board for that pirate night. So,
even for the adults.
Yeah,
the adults were buying the hats and
you go.
Earrings and all this stuff. And I was just cracking up to see all the adults with their obviously freshly bought Disney gear.
So you mentioned for the ports of call here, you skipped Nassau. That was a sea day, but you did make it to Castaway. So how was your day there?
I was a little worried because first thing in the morning, I went out on the balcony and it was raining. And I was like, I hope we don't have a bad day at Castaway. But by 10 o'clock, the sun had burned off all the rain and it just wound up being a beautiful day, light winds. So it wasn't hot, but it was very comfortable. The water was a little too cold for my taste. My husband's insane. So, of course, he wanted to go swimming in the ocean. And I got about knee deep and said, this is enough. This is ice cold water. So I just pulled a chair up and let my feet sit in the ice cold water on the sand. And he hung out in the ocean. And we just chatted and watched some other people. Not many people were in the ocean because of that. They do a full buffet on the island. And so we got to enjoy that. We did go over to Serenity Bay, which is the adult only area of Castaway Cay. And so there were not a ton of people. Again, it was a little windy. There were a lot of families over in the family area because kids don't feel cold. They just want to play in the water. They want to play in the sand. But the adults are a little more sensitive to the cold weather. So there were probably 20 to 30 people total over in Serenity Bay. Most of them on chairs at the edge of the beach, at the edge of the water, not actually in the water.
Serenity Bay, I know it's adults only, but that's known for, is it serving steak at lunch?
They do barbecue.
Barbecue, okay. They did steak on my sailing, but it might be totally different now. That was like 3 years ago. But the tram system there, like if you're going from where the ship docks over to Serenity Bay, like if you were to make that walk, how long would that take you against how long a tram would take?
It would be a long walk because it was 2 trams to get to Serenity Bay. Now, they've got a trail. You can do it. But I think that would be over a mile walk. Because the one tram, there's 2 different spots. You've got the Family Beach and Pelican Beach, which they have a little kids play area with the bucket that dumps and some slides. So the tram stops at both of those beaches. And then at the furthest beach, at the Family Beach, you actually get on another tram to go over to Serenity Bay.
Gotcha. So there's 2 transfers.
The third tram stop, if you will, and that's a good ways out.
Okay, makes sense. Was the water, I mean, you mentioned the kids were playing in the water. I'm just trying to think. It was chilly here. It was like in the 40s over the weekend when you were down there here in Jacksonville. And I know you're in the Bahamas, so it's a little bit warmer than Jacksonville, Florida. But even though like Orlando got into the 40s, was it? Could you feel the cool breeze on the island?
You could, definitely. The water was cold. Very few people were in the ocean. After a while, I was sitting on the edge of the beach with my feet in. After a while, I could get in maybe up to my waist, but I wasn't staying in the water. It was just too cold. The sun was out, so it was in the high 70s. So it was comfortable if you were just sitting out by the water. Even with the light breeze, it was still very comfortable. It was just the water that was very cold.
All right, so your 3-night cruise is coming toward an end. You make your way back to Central Florida, to Port Canaveral. How was the debark process on Disney Wish?
It was very, very easy. Disney does something that's kind of interesting. If you have early dining, then they have you scheduled to dine at 7 a.m. at the last restaurant that you ate at. And if you have late dining, they schedule you to dine at 8 a.m. at the last restaurant you ate at. So since we had late dining, we were able to go to our final restaurant at 8 a.m. and have a nice meal, go back to the room, grab our stuff and leave. Since we drove, we weren't pressed for time to get off the ship quickly. And so it let us have a nice breakfast, grab our stuff without having to lug everything around. And we were almost the last ones off the ship.
Nice.
And with the new facial recognition, we literally walked off, grabbed our luggage, walked to our car. It was fantastic.
When you head back to the Atlanta area, do you take 95 up to 16 or do you take 75 up?
We take 75 up, take the turnpike to 75 and then straight up.
Gotcha. Well, any first-time tips to offer someone sailing Disney Wish? I know that sounds like if you want to go to Apollo or the other specialty restaurant, to make sure you try to get in on that early.
There are just so many things to do. The one thing that we noticed on the Wish is that we need to go back because we missed a ton of stuff. Kind of knowing that I wanted to hit this and I wanted to hit that, but there were so many different venues and trivia going on and karaoke and games that there was always something fun. And we were determined we were going to go see a show in one of the theaters, and they had some Zootopia that just released in the movie theaters was showing. And we were going to go see that, but we just didn't have enough time because there's just so much to do on a Disney ship.
Can a travel agent help you? For instance, if I were to book a Disney cruise through you and I didn't want to do concierge, it was a little too pricey for me. For instance, the morning show girl at the radio station, she booked a 7-night cruise for her family of 5. It was $33,000, right? That's a lot of money. But my question is, like, can a travel agent help secure those reservations, or is the client off on their own and, hey, it's up to you?
Yes and no. I have a lot of early mornings helping clients book dining, and Palo and Enchante are some of the things that I will try. But just because you're a travel agent doesn't mean that you have a special in to get it. It just means I know to be online at 6:01 a.m. to make sure that I'm the first one in line trying to get that for them. And so my daughter's my business partner in the travel agency. So she helps. And lots of times with 3 of us, because I recommend to the client, if that's something that they really, really want, they should try as well. And with all 3 of us trying, me, my daughter, and the client, we have had a lot of luck in getting those hard to get reservations.
It's like the fast pass, right? When everyone's trying to snag that, everyone gets on at the same time, and whoever gets it kind of loops everyone else in.
Yep, exactly.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of your cruise on Disney Wish?
The entertainment. They do just such incredible shows on Disney. The talent is really good. And the food. It was really, really good food.
In closing here, your final thoughts of Disney Wish.
It's not just for kids. We had a great time spending time up in the adult area. There were plenty of kids, but the kids love the kids area on Disney ships. So it's not like it's loud and there's kids everywhere you turn around. It was actually a very fun, I wouldn't say peaceful. It was a kind of energetic cruise, but it was a very fun cruise. And we had a great time, even though the grandkids weren't with us. All
right. Been talking with Margie about her 3-night cruise on Disney Wish. Margie, as always, great talking to you. When is your next one?
Right now, our next one is scheduled for May. We're going to Alaska.
Awesome. Well, have a happy new year. Great talking to you again.
Thanks. You too.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,